if you choose to ignore the next few minutes. Your financial future may end up as nothing more than a pile of heavy, worthless yellow metal, while the world around you moves on to a different kind of survival. I am making you a solemn commitment right now that if you stay until the final second of this analysis, you will possess a blueprint for security that 99% of the population is currently too blind to see. We are not here to discuss market fluctuations or stock tips, as we are performing a forensic autopsy on the death of empires to understand what actually keeps a family alive when the lights go out for good. Picture yourself standing in the ruins of what was once a prosperous middle-class neighborhood in the city of Sarajevo during the year 1993. Your neighbor, a man who was a respected senior banker before the shells began to fall, approaches you with a look of pure desperation in his eyes. He is holding out a heavy, solid gold necklace that would have cost a small fortune in the old world. A piece of jewelry that likely represents his family's entire legacy. He is not asking for a pile of cash or a bank transfer, but instead, he wants a single pack of cigarettes and 3 simple disposable lighters. In this frozen moment of history, the banker understands a truth that most modern investors have forgotten, which is that gold is only valuable if someone else has the luxury to care about it. In a city under a brutal siege with no electricity, no running water, and no functioning food supply, that gold is just a piece of shiny, cold metal that you cannot eat or burn for warmth. The lighters, however, represent the difference between life and death because they provide fire for cooking, fire for heat, and fire for boiling water to prevent the spread of deadly diseases. This story is not a piece of post-apocalyptic fiction, as it was documented by a survivor named Selco who lived through more than a year of total urban collapse. Selco watched as the people who had spent their lives stacking gold and silver coins slowly starved to death, while those with practical skills and the right tools began to thrive. The conventional wisdom of the modern prepper movement tells you to stack bullion because if you do not hold it, you do not own it. And while there is some truth to that, it is a dangerously incomplete strategy. When we forensically examine the documented reality of total economic collapse, rather than relying on unproven theories, we find that gold consistently ranks far below 4 other critical pillars of survival. These pillars are practical skills, productive land, specialized tools, and a strong, trust-based community, which together form what we call the Amish Hedge. By the end of our investigation, you will understand why a $1,000 investment in practical goods will save your family when a $10,000 stack of gold bullion proves to be utterly useless. History shows us that currency collapse happens at a speed that no one believes is possible until they are standing in the middle of it. In the country of Bosnia, the transition from a functioning, money-based society to an economy of pure, primitive barter took only a few short months rather than years. Selco documented how in those chaotic early days, people still desperately tried to use their paper currency, hoping that the system would eventually stabilize and return to normal. Within just a few weeks, prices for basic necessities multiplied by factors of 20, 30, or even 100 times their original value. A pack of cigarettes that cost 1.5 German marks outside the war zone was suddenly trading for 40 marks inside the city, provided you could even find someone willing to take paper. We see this same terrifying pattern repeating in Venezuela from the year 2016 up to the present day, where inflation rates exceeded 1 million%. The local currency, the Bolivar, became so worthless that citizens jokingly began to call it the Bolivar Muerto, which translates to the dead Bolivar. The government attempted to respond by removing high-denomination bills from circulation, giving the people only 72 hours to exchange their life savings before the money was declared illegal. Imagine having only 3 days to save everything you have worked for before the state officially declares your wealth to be nothing more than worthless. Colorful scraps of paper. We see the same stages of collapse in the history of Argentina. Between the years 1998 and 2002, during this period, the national economy contracted by 28%, and more than 50% of the population fell below the official poverty line. Those who had kept their savings in the local peso experienced devastating, life-altering losses that they would never truly recover from. It is always the same pattern, involving the same predictable stages, and leading to the same tragic outcome for those who are unprepared. The second rule of a failing economy is that when the currency dies, the society immediately reverts to barter, where only utility and function matter. In Venezuela today, fishermen at a beach resort called Patanamo have stopped looking at price tags and instead exchange their daily catch for bags of rice or bananas. One fisherman described the situation perfectly by stating that money does not buy anything anymore. So it is better for people to bring food directly so they can receive fish in return. Farmers are now traveling hundreds of kilometers to the city of Caracas, carrying heavy loads of yams, cassava, and lemons to exchange for basic staples like flour or pasta. They are not interested in selling their produce for a currency that loses value by the hour, as they only want to trade for goods they can use immediately. In the regions where coffee is grown, local hardware stores have begun accepting raw coffee beans as a standardized form of payment. 3 sacks of coffee weighing 100 kilos each might be traded for 200 liters of gasoline. Because the beans are standardized, consumable, and have a clear use value. This is a process of economic reversion, where a modern society is forced back into a pre-industrial state of barter, where gold has no place. You cannot eat gold. You cannot burn it to stay warm during a winter freeze. And you certainly cannot use it to purify a gallon of dirty river water. The person who knows how to grow a garden, the person who can repair a broken water pump, or the person who has a stockpile of hygiene supplies is the one who truly holds the power. These are the individuals who survive because they provide something that the community actually needs to function on a day-to-day basis. We look back at the Great Depression to see that productive land and manual skills have always trumped financial savings in times of extreme stress. During that dark period, farmers struggled as crop prices fell to devastating lows, with some even burning their corn for fuel because it was cheaper than buying coal. However, those with productive land possessed an irreplaceable advantage because they could always produce enough food to keep their families fed. Documented accounts from rural Iowa show that farm families raised massive gardens, canned their own fruit, and produced their own milk, cream, and meat. They bought their flour and sugar in 50-pound sacks and baked their own bread, while their wives made clothing from the cloth of old feed sacks. Even with zero cash income flowing into the household, these families survived and even found ways to help their neighbors who were less fortunate. Meanwhile, urban families who relied entirely on a paycheck were left destitute, standing in long lines for a bowl of thin soup and a piece of stale bread. In the city of Dubuque, Iowa, over 2,200 workers lost their jobs between the years 1927 and 1934. Even those who managed to keep their jobs saw their wages drop by 30%, leading to a state of constant, gnawing hunger because they had no way to produce for themselves. One man recently shared that his grandfather survived those years only because he had a small 4-acre farm and the skills to perform carpentry and painting. He did not survive because he had a hoard of gold or a large savings account, but because he had the land and the ability to work with his hands This principle was proven again during World War II through the incredible success of the Victory Garden movement, which operated at a massive national scale. More than 20 million individual gardens were planted in the year 1943, producing an astounding 10 billion pounds of food. This effort accounted for 40% of the entire vegetable supply in the United States, with 2/3 of these gardens located in crowded towns and suburban areas. By the following year, more than half of the Americans growing these gardens admitted they were doing so out of economic necessity rather than just patriotism. The mechanism of survival here is purely mathematical. As farmland produces tangible income and direct food, regardless of what the central bank is doing, the academic data confirms that farmland value actually increased by 17% during the financial crisis of 2008 and 2009. During that same window of time, the S&P 500 index declined by 46%, proving that productive earth is a far better hedge than paper assets. Between the years 2000 and 2019, the stock market posted negative returns in 28 different quarters. In 26 of those 28 quarters, where stocks were failing, farmland continued to post positive returns for its owners. This is not a matter of market speculation, but a form of fundamental insurance that protects you from the total collapse of the monetary system. When we look at survival capital, we must realize that the list of truly valuable skills is actually very specific and centers on basic human needs. During the Great Depression, people found ways to make a living by catching fish, making homemade fudge, or even shoveling snow for their neighbors. Every single one of these survival strategies involved the creation or the processing of something with tangible, immediate value. The skills that commanded the highest price were always related to food production, clothing repair, shelter improvement, or basic medical care. A person who could slaughter an animal and preserve the meat through smoking possessed a set of skills that no economic collapse could ever take away. Doctors, nurses, and dentists remained fully employed throughout the 1930s because people always found a way to pay for medical care. Even if it meant trading a basket of eggs, a skilled carpenter represents a valuable asset that is stored within the person and can be deployed anywhere. Whereas gold just sits in a dark vault doing nothing. Selco's testimony from Bosnia reveals that once a currency becomes truly worthless, certain practical items emerge as the most valuable forms of money. Ammunition always ranked at the top of the list because it was needed for both hunting and the essential task of self-defense. However, he warned that you must be very careful when trading ammunition, because whatever you sell to a stranger today might be used against you tomorrow. Hygiene items also held a remarkable amount of value during the siege, as a single bottle of bleach could purify hundreds of gallons of water. Simple bars of soap, tubes of toothpaste, and feminine hygiene products commanded incredibly high prices on the black market. A bar of soap that cost only 50 cents before the war could be traded for a dozen fresh eggs during the height of the crisis. Medicine, specifically antibiotics and pain relievers, held an almost infinite value because so many people were dying from basic infections. This brings us to a revelation that changes everything we think we know about preparing for a total systemic failure. Selco actually recommends owning 1,000 disposable lighters instead of a large, expensive, fuel-powered generator. A generator is noisy. It requires a constant supply of scarce fuel, and it attracts the wrong kind of attention from people who might want to steal it. Lighters, on the other hand, are silent. They are portable, and they can be hidden in multiple locations so that losing some does not ruin you. They are very cheap to acquire right now and can even be refilled if you have the right equipment and a supply of propane. These small, Practical items that address fundamental human needs hold a much more reliable value than complex technological solutions that are vulnerable to theft. Selco used a large propane tank to refill lighters, which he then traded for food, candles, and other necessities to keep his family alive. The logic is simple but profound, because a lighter provides the fire needed for heat, for light, and for the preparation of food. In a true siege environment, these functions are absolutely non-negotiable and will always be in high demand. We must also address the uncomfortable fact that gold and jewelry held very poor value during the actual height of the Bosnian crisis. Warlords and criminals often took precious metals from desperate people at the price of a single can of soup. The criminals understood that the gold would regain its value once the war ended. But the people who owned it were so hungry that they were willing to trade a wedding ring for a single meal. This is happening again in Venezuela right now, proving that these lessons are not just dusty historical theories but living realities. Modern economic collapse always reverts a society back to pre-modern modes of existence, where the only thing that matters is what you can produce. In the parallel collapse that occurred in the country of Zimbabwe, the black market for basic medicine exploded in size and importance. A simple dose of amoxicillin could be worth an entire week of hard manual labor because the official medical system had completely disintegrated. Those who had the foresight to stockpile bandages, pain relievers, and antiseptic materials held assets that were far more valuable than silver. You cannot use a pound of silver to treat an infected wound, and you cannot use a gold coin to stop a fever. But a bottle of medicine can be the difference between life and death. If you are starting to realize that your current financial plan is built on a foundation of sand, then you need to change your perspective immediately. We are looking at the patterns of dead empires to ensure that you do not repeat the mistakes of those who have already fallen. One of the most overlooked assets in any survival situation is the strength of your community and your social network. Meta-analytic studies involving over 300,000 participants found that individuals with strong social relationships have a 50% higher chance of survival. This effect on your lifespan is actually comparable to the benefits of quitting, smoking, or maintaining a healthy physical lifestyle. Selco noted that almost every successful trade during the war was made through private arrangements with people who were already trusted before the conflict began. Trust-based relationships become the primary economic infrastructure. When the formal banking and legal systems are no longer functioning, if you live in an isolated household with no connection to your neighbors, you are at a massive disadvantage compared to a tight-knit community. Groups like the Amish have a built-in advantage because they are already organized around mutual aid, shared resources, and a culture of helping one another. A community that can coordinate a response, pool its remaining resources, and provide security will always outperform a group of individuals acting alone. In Venezuela, local neighborhoods have informally organized food-sharing networks to ensure that the most vulnerable members do not starve. In Bosnia, communities organized around trusted local leaders to manage their limited resources and coordinate their survival strategies for your own contemporary preparedness. This means that you should be spending as much time building relationships with your neighbors as you do stocking your pantry. Social capital is a form of survival capital that cannot be stolen and will never lose its value due to inflation. Our comparative analysis essentially destroys the common claim that gold is the ultimate insurance policy against a total societal collapse. While gold might help you preserve your wealth after a new system is established, it does absolutely nothing to help you get through the crisis itself. The fundamental problem is that gold does not produce an income, and it does not satisfy any immediate, life-sustaining need. Food feeds your children, tools allow you to repair your shelter, and your skills give you the ability to provide value to others in your community. Gold is inedible. It is non-functional, and its value is entirely dependent on finding someone else who is willing to trade their precious food for it. During the early stages of a collapse, when people are terrified and desperate, they are not going to be looking for gold coins. In the later stages, once the world has stabilized, you might be glad you have it, but you have to survive the middle part first. The person who holds only gold while their neighbors hold productive assets will suffer through the crisis without any means of generating a new income. We saw this clearly during the financial crisis of 2008, where farmland provided stable returns while everything else was crashing. The average volatility of farmland over the last 30 years was only 6.84%, which is less than half the volatility of the stock market. During periods of high inflation, farmland returns averaged over 14% annually, which is more than double the rate of inflation itself. This is not a theory, but a historical fact that has been proven time and time again across different centuries and different continents. So, where are we seeing the warning signs of this process right now in our modern world? We see Venezuela in the final stage of total collapse, where the currency is worthless and the economy has reverted to primitive barter. We see the nation of Turkey in an advancing stage of crisis, where official inflation figures are understated and citizens are fleeing the local lira. In Lebanon, we saw a stage 4 collapse, where banks froze the accounts of their customers and the currency lost 98% of its value in just 18 months. And then we have the elephant in the room, which is the United States and its $38 trillion of national debt. The official projections from the Congressional Budget Office suggest that these massive deficits will continue indefinitely into the foreseeable future. Interest payments on the national debt now exceed the total amount spent on national defense, which is a historic and dangerous milestone. The balance sheet of the Federal Reserve has expanded by trillions of dollars since the year 2008, creating a massive bubble of liquidity. Central banks across the globe are currently buying gold at the fastest pace since the year 1996, signaling a lack of confidence in the dollar. For the first time in civilized history, 100% of the world's currencies are fiat, meaning they are backed by nothing more than government promises. Because of our global interdependency, a collapse in one major Western currency will likely trigger a simultaneous domino effect across the entire world. This is the definition of systemic failure, and it is the reason why the Amish Hedge is the only logical strategy for the modern era. To implement this strategy, you must first focus on acquiring productive land if it is at all economically feasible for you. Even a small backyard garden or a rooftop plot can provide a meaningful amount of food and help you develop the skills you will need. Second, you must develop a set of practical, manual skills that will always be in high demand, such as gardening, plumbing, or basic medical nursing. Third, you must accumulate a stockpile of practical goods with direct utility, such as tools, batteries, lighters, and preserved foods. These items will maintain their value regardless of what happens to the dollar and will become your primary currency in a barter economy. Fourth, you must explicitly and seriously build your community networks by getting to know the people who live right next door to you. Finally, once you have secured these first 4 elements, you can hold some precious metals as a way to maintain optionality for the future. The evidence from multiple documented collapses, from Bosnia to the Great Depression, all leads to the same consistent conclusion. Survival does not depend on your bank balance or your gold hoard, but on your productive capacity and your community. The question you need to ask yourself is not if this is going to happen, but whether you have positioned yourself to survive when it does. If this forensic investigation has changed the way you look at the world, then I encourage you to take action today. The only thing worse than seeing the collapse coming is being standing in a breadline, wondering why your gold cannot buy a single loaf. Now is the time to diversify your life before the world forces you to do it under much more difficult circumstances.